One crime, 1,000 questions. Welcome to True Crime Briefing, where the truth is never buried for long.
In the heart of Alabama, a chilling tale of obsession, rage, and unspeakable violence unfolded one sweltering summer night in 1988. It began with a love affair. It ended in murder. Now, nearly 4 decades later, the man convicted of that crime, Gregory Hunt, is facing execution by a controversial method that is barely or have never been used before in the United States. The clock is ticking toward June 10th, 2025, and the nation is watching. This is the brutal, tragic case of Karen Lane and the long, winding road to justice. You are watching True Crime Briefing, your #1 channel for true crime stories based and on facts. Sit tight and stay glued to your screen. By August 1988, 28-year-old Gregory Hunt had been dating 32-year-old Karen Sanders Lane for just about a month. Karen, a mother of 2, was going through a divorce and living with her cousin Tina Gilliland in an apartment in Cordova, Alabama. Her own house stood empty. She wasn't staying there, and neither was her estranged husband. But despite the short length of their relationship, Hunt had already grown dangerously possessive. On the afternoon of August 1st, 1988, Karen's cousin Tina was napping when her ex-husband stopped by to pick up their kids. His girlfriend, who was with him, would later recall Hunt storming around the apartment, angry, shouting. He yelled that he was sick of everything and said he was heading back to Florida. And then came the threat. He said Karen made him so mad that he could kill the beep. No one called the police. No one knew just how serious he was. But by the next night, Karen Lane would be dead. That same evening, Karen and Tina left the apartment to visit Tina's boyfriend. When they arrived, they saw Hunt's van already parked outside. But instead of going in, Karen turned around and drove off. She didn't want to see him. Tina went inside. It was Hunt who opened the door. Furious, he asked, "Why isn't Karen with you?" When Tina explained that Karen had gone to visit her mother, Hunt snapped. "Oh, so she saw my van, knew I was here, and decided to leave," he shouted. Later that night, Hunt would tell a friend, who later testified, that he was going to do something about this problem. He also called Tina and angrily said that Karen wasn't at her mother's house. He suspected she was with another man. Then he added chillingly, "I'll go back to prison if I have to." What happened next was the beginning of a deadly, calculated rampage. Witnesses later reported seeing Hunt drive his van to Karen's empty house. Remember, the one she wasn't living in. Moments later, smoke and flames erupted from the home. Gregory Hunt was seen driving away. Then, he showed up uninvited at the home of a woman named Deborah Twilley. Their relationship is unclear, but Twilley later said Hunt was already inside her house when she got home. His confession was blunt. "I just burned down my girlfriend's house," he told her. Not long after, he called Tina's boyfriend and asked about Karen. When the friend told him that her house had just burned down, Hunt didn't deny it. Instead, he went looking for her. At around 2 a.m. on August 2nd, a neighbor spotted Hunt outside the Cordova apartment that Karen shared with Tina and her children. Karen was alone that night. Hunt smashed a window and entered. What happened inside is almost too horrific to describe. Karen Lane was brutally assaulted. The medical examiner later testified that she had over 60 injuries across her body, including 20 blows to the head, fractured ribs, and evidence of sexual assault. A broomstick was used to penetrate her. This wasn't just murder. It was rage unleashed. After killing her, Hunt didn't flee. Instead, he picked up the apartment's phone and called Tina again. "I just got here. Karen's dead on the floor." He tried to blame her estranged husband, but no one bought it. The evidence and the timeline painted a very different picture. By the time authorities arrived, Hunt was gone. A full-scale manhunt began, and he managed to evade capture for weeks, traveling through multiple states. He was finally arrested in October of that year, over 2 months after the murder. When police examined the crime scene and gathered testimony, everything pointed to Hunt. A bloody palm print matched his. His fingerprints were found on multiple surfaces. Multiple witnesses confirmed his threats, and a jailhouse informant later claimed Hunt confessed, saying he'd been drinking and using cocaine that day, and simply snapped. In 1990, Gregory Hunt stood trial for 3 counts of capital murder, 2 connected to sexual assault, 1 tied to robbery. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence and painted Hunt as a volatile man driven by jealousy and violence. The defense argued that the case was circumstantial, but it wasn't enough. The jury convicted Hunt on all counts. In an 11-1 vote, they recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed. Gregory Hunt became probably the first person in Walker County sentenced to death in nearly 50 years. What followed was decades of appeals. Hunt's legal team challenged everything, from the forensic evidence to the competence of his trial attorney. But court after court upheld the conviction. In 2005, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals wrote, "The evidence was overwhelming, but Hunt wasn't done fighting." In 2018, Alabama approved a new, controversial execution method, nitrogen hypoxia. The method deprives the body of oxygen using pure nitrogen. Advocates call it humane. Critics say it's untested and potentially dangerous. Gregory Hunt chose this method. If carried out, his execution will be among the first of its kind in U.S. history. In May 2025, Hunt filed a final appeal, without a lawyer, claiming he never sexually assaulted Karen Lane. He argued that without that aggravating factor, the death penalty shouldn't apply. But the Attorney General's office called it a last-ditch effort, and the date was set, June 10th, 2025. For Karen Lane's family, the pain of that night in 1988 has never faded. Her gravestone bears a haunting inscription. Crime will probably not decrease until being a criminal becomes more dangerous than being a victim. For Gregory Hunt, the decades have been long, but justice may soon be served. Yet questions remain about the execution method, about due process, and about what truly drives a person to kill someone they once claimed to love. As the nation watches what could be a historic first, one question lingers in the air like the smoke from that fire so long ago. What do we do with men like Gregory Hunt? And who gets to decide how they die? Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. At Alabama's Holman Correctional Facility, 65-year-old Gregory Hunt met his fate after nearly 4 decades on death row. Just after 5:55 p.m., the state began administering nitrogen gas through a mask. It was only the 3rd time in U.S. history this controversial method had been used. Hunt shook, gasped, and briefly raised his head. At 5:59, a moan echoed through the chamber. He made a few final gasping breaths. And by 6:26 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Hunt offered no last words, but gave a thumbs up and a peace sign before the mask sealed his fate. Earlier that day, he refused a final dinner, settling instead for a standard prison lunch: bologna, black-eyed peas, carrots, and fruit punch. Gregory Hunt became Alabama's third execution of 2025, and just the sixth American to die by nitrogen hypoxia, a method as silent as it is controversial. Thanks for watching this episode of True Crime Briefing. If this story moved you, or made you think, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. We're here to tell the stories behind the headlines, the pain behind the verdicts, and the people behind the crimes. Let us know your thoughts on this case in the comment section. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.